foundation that it provides to our region's economy. This is North America's largest estuary on the Pacific Ocean. The birds, fishery, the wildlife. We love it for its history, which tells the story of California and who came here to find opportunity. All in all, we love the Delta in its totality, not just for the water that flows through it, but for the place that it is and the people who live here. And we're committed to preserving and protecting it. But there are other forces at work as well. They talk about restoring the Delta, but their focus is singular and narrow. For them, it's all about the water. Too much of it, in their view, flows through the Delta, and not enough is diverted elsewhere. They have ideas on how to fix it. The problem is, they don't want the Delta community to participate. Our message is quite simple. You can't fix the Delta without the people of the Delta as your partners. Some will try and tell you that the Delta community is a roadblock to solutions in the Delta. Those interests suggest that we just need to get out of the way so progress can occur. So that the state can heal the Delta by diverting the Sacramento River, California's largest river, into a canal the size of a 100-lane freeway, 48 miles long, through some of the best prime agricultural soil in the world.
California's Panama Canal.
Those that live in the Delta know better. They know that the Delta is home to more than 500,000 people. Many, many acres of family farms producing world-class asparagus, wine grapes, and much, much more. Together, these farms contribute $2 billion to California's economy. They know that this is the place where Chinese immigrants were able to build and own a legacy town, Locke, which is now on the National Historic Registry. They know that the Delta encompasses 5 counties and 27 cities and 2 ports. World-class birding and hunting and boating and hiking takes place in the Delta. 90% of California's famed salmon rely on the Delta and its watershed to support a $1 billion salmon fishery on the West Coast. And those same salmon that scientists are now telling us that are critical to the health of the orca, the killer whale in the Pacific Ocean. Those that know the Delta know that it's not a blank slate. It's a unique and valuable place where people live and work and play. Those that know the Delta know that it must be saved. Your participation here is terrific today. You're sending a message, loud and clear, that those of us who live and love the Delta are tired of failed attempts. We need real solutions. It's time that the Delta voice be heard and that the health of the Delta is restored. And with that, there are a lot of people up here who would like to talk to you today. I would like to introduce all of them quickly. Please don't applaud. And then there'll be individual speakers. We have Lieutenant Governor Garamendi, Senator DeSaulnier, Assemblymember Huber, Assemblymember Buchanan, I believe, will be here as soon as she's finished with her hearing, Assemblymember Yamada, Vacaville Mayor Len Augustine, Dixon Vice Mayor Rick Fuller, from Winters, Cecilia Aguilar-Curry from the City Council, Jim Spearing, Solano County Supervisor. We have Delta Supervisors, Yolo County Supervisor Mike McGowan, Jim Provenza, Don Natoli, Davis, Solano County Supervisor John Vasquez. We have Davis Vice Mayor Don Saylor, and if I've missed anyone, and Contra Costa Supervisor Mary Pifo. I'll tell you about who else is here as soon as I turn around, but first I want to introduce, and as soon as they hit me on the back and explain to me who I missed, and my apologies to them. But first, I would like to introduce someone who actually wakes up every morning in the Delta, Lieutenant Governor John Garamendi.
Lois, you're quite correct. The Delta's my home and has been for 32 years. Patty and I have raised our family there, and we farm there. And every day we wake up to one of the most beautiful places in this world. It's also a place where you can gossip over coffee at any number of coffee shops, and there's plenty of farming done there. Some of you know. We fought the floods in 1986 and the droughts in between. We've watched the boats on the river decline 32 years ago. There were boats there. Jay Sorensen can tell me and tell all of us about that. The salmon runs and the striped bass runs. The boats aren't there anymore. Rarely do you see fishermen on the river. The Delta is the largest estuary on the west coast of the Western Hemisphere. It's extraordinarily important for its ecological values. And it's a very, very sick place. Its ecology and its environment has been severely damaged. Over the last 32 years, I've watched it happen year after year. I know our state has grown in population. Its agricultural enterprises have grown. Its industries have grown. And so has the thirst and the demand for water. And that water comes from the Delta. The fishing industry is in severe decline. It's rapidly disappearing. A couple $100 million a year industry is almost gone. And it's not just those in the Delta, the fisheries, or the farmers, but because the Delta is sick, agriculture in California is also threatened. Climate change makes all of this much more severe and more timely. How do we deal with the Delta? The voice of the Delta must be heard because it is a voice of knowledge. It is a voice of emotion. It's also a voice that will not be silenced. Study after study has been done, and yet we do not know. We have some ideas about why the Delta is declining, and every study points to one fact: the export of water from the Delta.
Yeah!
How do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? Any solution has to first go to conservation. That conservation will take place in agriculture, as it has, and more must be done. That conservation must be taking place in our urban centers, in homes, and in industry. We also know that there's a very viable source of water in every community, and it's called reclamation. And for the Bureau of Reclamation, it's time for them to honor their name. And to engage in reclaiming water. Probably the 5th or 6th largest river on the west coast of the Western Hemisphere are the sanitation facilities in Southern California. Let's do real reclamation, let's do real water recycling, and let's save a lot of water that doesn't have to come from the Delta. Many of us have been through this fight before, and I see it emerging once again. There are solutions. In 1982, during the Great Peripheral Canal battle, the battle cry in the North was, policy before plumbing. So, where's the policy that guarantees the environmental protection of the Delta? Where's the policy that provides the guarantee that the Delta Islands will be maintained Where is the policy that guarantees that the agricultural and economic interests of the Delta will be maintained? Where is the policy that provides a guarantee for the livelihood and the continuation of a very vibrant social culture and economic culture of the Delta? I want to see those policies before there's any plumbing. And I think you do too. Firm, ironclad guarantees, not something that can be waived in a majority vote of the legislature in a drought year, not something that can be brushed aside with a court order, but rather something that will protect the most important estuary, the most important estuarial ecosystem on the west coast of the Western Hemisphere. Show me those guarantees, and then we'll talk about the plumbing. That's how it must be. And finally, or 2 points. One, all too many things are done in secret in the building behind me. Critical public policy that is hatched in secret, popped onto the floor of the legislature in perfunctory hearings, and signed by the governor. We will not let that happen. This is too important. This is too important for agriculture everywhere in the state of California, for every citizen, and for the environment of the state of California. So let there be light. Let's do the hearings, real hearings. Let's hear the debate. Let's vet the ideas. And then we know, certainly we know in the Delta, that there has to be a solution. And to do nothing is not an option. And finally, behind me are the supervisors from the 5 counties that represent the Delta. They represent the voice of 500,000 people that live in the Delta. And to this day, they've been excluded from the discussions. There has to be a viable role. There has to be a meaningful role for the people of the Delta to express their voice in what we like to think is a democracy. So let it be so. They've come up with a very viable plan. Let's see that program in any legislation that moves forward so that the voice of the Delta is heard in what we still believe is a democratic society. We have our work cut out for us. We have our work cut out for us. But let it be clear that the voice of the Delta, the voice of the fish, the wildlife, the birds, the farmers, the communities, it will be heard.
Our next speaker is, I would like to introduce to you Senator Mark DeSaulnier. He represents most of Contra Costa County. He is in the Senate and represents the 7th District. He is a member of the Senate Committee on Delta Stewardship and Sustainability. Mark?
First off, to my seatmate, the Senate, Lois Wolk, I'd just like to thank her for her leadership. She has been passionate and steady, and she certainly will not allow those late-night deals to happen if she can possibly avoid it. To the Lieutenant Governor of California, who I'm getting to see frequently, I doubt if I could add to the passion that he has about protecting the Delta and the years he's had protecting this valuable resource. And to all of you today, here we are standing on this glorious day in Sacramento on the steps of the state capitol. We are here to protect what gave California life to begin with, what gives California life today, and we are here to protect and assure that the Delta will give California life for generations to come. Not by adding unnecessary architecture that sees the Delta merely as a bucket of water rather than a place, rather than our home. We who live there and represent it want to be part of the solution. We're not obstructionists. We understand the responsibilities both to the outer community, to the rest of the state of California, but we most importantly understand our responsibilities as this generation of stewards of protecting our home, the 29 cities, the 5 counties, the people who actually are the current stewards and the residents of the Delta. In this building behind us, there are a lot of deals cut. What we're saying today is we will not go quietly into the night. We will not allow a late night deal to ruin the Delta for something that we don't believe is the ultimate solution. When I was on the California Air Resources Board, we were first looking into greenhouse gas and CO2. The 2 things our scientists told us was the first place that would be impacted by climate change was the Delta, and we see that already happening. But the second part was the users of that water had to change. The agricultural industry has to change because its carbon footprint is much too large. It's an industry in the process of changing, and it must change. It must be more efficient, and it must be more organic, and it must be more responsible to all the people who buy their product. And then we, the residents and the commercial users, as the Lieutenant Governor said, we have to be as efficient with water as we have been with electricity and power. So first we have to do those things. But lastly, let me just say once again, we are not here as obstructionists. We are only here to protect our home. We realize our responsibility to California, and in fact, that's what we're doing by saying we're not going to allow a secret deal to happen that eliminates this wonderful place that gave California life. And as I said before, we'll give California life in the future only if we stand up and scream, no, you cannot do this without our voices being heard. Thank you.
I knew I forgot someone. Bruce Connolly, City Council of Oakley is here. Thanks for coming. I'd like to introduce now Assemblymember Allison Huber, newly elected, but a very strong presence in the Assembly. Her district includes a portion of the Delta in San Joaquin County. Allison.
Thank you, Lois, and thank all of you for being here. I know it's starting to warm up as you sit in the sun, so I'll be brief. I grew up on the Delta. When I first moved to Lodi, I lived right on Potato Slough at Tower Park Marina. And literally, the Delta was my backyard. It's where I swam, it's where I played, it's where I got to know my community. Having the Delta in my backyard as a child makes me especially protective of its future for the next generations. A new vision is needed for the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, one that includes our vision. Like you, I am greatly concerned that the Delta residents are not having a voice in the process, particularly the process that they're trying to push through right now. Those that live within the 5 Delta counties must be part of the process to determine what happens to their water. The local farms that depend on the water and the critical habitat for hundreds of plants and animals. We know the Delta's needs and value its health because it's uniquely tied to our everyday lives. Residents who live in Delta counties cannot be ignored while decisions are made that could drastically affect the region. Furthermore, the Delta needs solid leadership to steward its resources for California, and I believe that that leadership is best provided by Delta representatives and residents that are there now. This is going to be a long and difficult struggle, but I'm convinced that with hard work and extensive outreach from the community of elected officials that we have here, we can ensure that the interest of those that depend on the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta will be heard. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Assemblymember Mariko Yamada. She represents the 8th Assembly District, most of Yolo and Solano counties, the Sassoon Marsh, and the Delta communities of Clarksburg and West Sacramento.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming out here to support a very, very important issue to all of us, and that is to ensure that the Delta is not discounted as we go forward with this water discussion that is critical for the state of California. I'm joined and feel embraced by these wonderful representatives that you've already heard from this morning. We all stand united to ensure that the voices of Delta residents and the public policy issue surrounding Delta as a place is heard loud and clear in the halls here of this building that belongs to you. You know, we all work for you here in this Capitol building. We want you to be sure that you feel welcome here, that your voices are going to be heard, that we are going to articulate the vision and the direction that has been of long standing in the Delta community. Unlike my colleague, Allison Huber, I'm a relative newcomer to Northern California. I have been here since 1995, coming from largely an urban background, from Colorado to Southern California to Washington, D.C. But I've been a Northern California resident now for the past 14 years. And there's an appreciation that I think needs to be shared throughout California about the critical voices that are needed to be heard in this Delta debate. Please be sure that you keep in touch with our office. I am delighted to be able to represent the 8th Assembly District, taking over from the very, very capable hands that Lois Wolk has acted upon in these last 6 years. And as a former member of the Yolo County Board of Supervisors as well, I know that we have a long, long history that needs to be communicated and articulated and not discounted. Thank you all for coming today, and let's go forward and make sure that our voices are continue to be heard. Thank you.
Something rather extraordinary happened during all of this, and that was that the 5 Delta counties came together and present a strong, united position on the Delta. And you all know that doesn't happen every day. I would like to introduce to you Contra Costa Supervisor Mary Pipo, who will speak on behalf of the 5 counties.
Well, good morning. First of all, I'd like to invite my 5 Delta County colleagues to join with me as we stand shoulder to shoulder and truly visualize what we hope will be strength to give the Delta a voice that preserves, protects, and enhances our spirit, our communities, our neighborhoods, and most importantly, our Delta, where we live, work, and play. It is our distinct pleasure to stand before you today to represent the 5 Delta counties, Solano, Yolo, San Joaquin, Sacramento, and my home, Contra Costa County. We're here to talk to you about the potential devastating impacts a proposed canal structure can and will have on our great California Delta.
Yes!
The time is now for us to come together and tell our governor and legislature that the Delta can no longer be ignored, and most importantly, mismanaged. We would like to thank Senator Lois Wolk and her staff, who have become our champions. To carry our message forward in any legislation that is considered on such a momentous issue. An issue with such serious implications and potential impacts. We wish to recognize Senator Wolk for her interest and join her in protecting our rights and our responsibilities of our Delta. For decades, those of us in local government have been good stewards. We've been successful and responsible stewards of the Delta. We have planned our county general plans around the California Delta Protection Act. We have preserved and protected sensitive agricultural lands in and around the Delta from urbanized development. We have fought to protect our fragile levee infrastructure, yet our Delta is collapsing. We in local government have been fierce advocates for the health of our Delta, and it has fallen on deaf ears. Yet, this same attention we have clamored for today is heading in a very dangerous direction. We have been ringing the bell, the alarm bell, for years, and only now, with delicate fish species dying, is the Delta finally getting its due attention. We seek to partner with fishermen and farmers, the Delta business owners, recreational interests, and families. Yes, we all have a responsibility to preserve and protect the Delta, and become better water stewards in the state of California. So we have asked Senator Wolk to work with us to restore our Delta environment, to protect our Delta communities, our Delta economy, our agricultural economy, and our homes. Goals equally important as water delivery. The Senator has answered our call to action. For any potential legislative solution for the Delta to be successful, it must have significant participation of the 5 Delta counties on any Delta governing bodies, or it will fail. We are here to enforce the message that there must be adequate financing for both mitigation measures for Delta communities impacted by any and all changes to the Delta, and to Delta restoration and water quality. As county supervisors representing the 5 Delta counties, we stand here with Senator Wolk to encourage responsible legislative leadership. We share grave concerns for the Delta ecosystem and seek the participation of our constituencies, and ask that any and all legislative proposals be handled under the light of day. True transparency, so we collectively can work together to ensure that true science drives the process, not politics. All right. And that we have truly successful outcomes, that we protect the fisheries, the habitat, our communities, and the great people of the Delta. We seek our own seats at the table in any plan and any and all Delta governance to ensure that the Delta communities and local governments are not bypassed or overrun by competing interests. We are not a special interest, but our interest is very special. The fragile Delta deserves our advocacy and our collective voice. We wish to work with Senator Wolk, our legislative delegation and leadership, the governor, and all of you to preserve, protect, and enhance our great California Delta. We live here. We want a clean, healthy, and most importantly, a sustainable Delta. We have a problem, yes, a very serious problem. But if the Delta is clean, healthy, and managed well, we will benefit from its bounty. We believe that this is achievable, and we look forward to building that effort and those partnerships with all of you. So on behalf of the 5 Delta counties, again, Solano, Yolo, Sacramento, San Joaquin, and Contra Costa, we thank you for listening to our concerns and working with us to resolve them as we work with our legislative partners to make sure that we have true, positive outcomes that we can measure and quantify at the local level. Thank you.
And now we're going to hear from members of the agricultural community, fishing community, community advocates, and the environmental community. I'd like to introduce to you Rudy Musey. He and his family have farmed Roberts and Union Islands for the past 69 years. He is also a director with the Central Valley Water Agency.
To say I'm a little out of my field would be an understatement. But because of the importance of this cause, I'm here today. When I was asked if I would like an opportunity to address my concerns about the Bay Delta Conservation Plan and what it would mean to agriculture in the Delta, I had to accept. For 110 years prior to the water transfer systems, Delta agriculture coexisted with its environment, and the environment flourished. To understand the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, really a water transfer plan, I reflected back to my childhood and how agriculture had changed from then to the present. As a young boy, I remember irrigating crops with my father in the mid-60s and being amazed by the number of fish in the irrigation ditches. As the water receded from those ditches, I could see the vast numbers of fish and thinking that if I jumped in to catch them, I would be eaten alive. Now, fast forward 40 years and a state water project later, it saddens me that in the last 20 years, I haven't seen a single fish in those ditches. As the health of the Delta estuary has worsened due to ever-increasing water exports, my farming practice has had to change due to worsening water quality. I've had to begin treating my irrigation water to facilitate the removals of salts. The addition of soil amendments such as lime and gypsum have now become a common practice for me. Winter leaching is a thing of the past for me because the rainfall flows that flush the Delta are now captured, starving the Delta of purifying flows. Flows that in some years didn't even meet the needs of the Delta. Just as the largest estuary in the Pacific coast is being starved, so is agriculture in the Delta. The Bay Delta Conservation Plan is nothing more than a plan to export even more water from the Delta and assure the destruction of a national treasure and the agriculture that operates within it. Thank you.
Before we get to the fishing community, I want to introduce Joan Buchanan, who represents a great deal of the Delta, including the communities of Isleton Ride, Lock, and Walnut Grove. Joan.
Thank you, Senator Walk. I need to tell you that between myself and my staff, we probably spend 20 to 25% of our time working on the Delta, and we've met with the people up here and many of you. So it's a very high priority for us. And the reason it is because if you overlay a map of the 15th Assembly District on the Delta, you will see that the primary zone of the Delta virtually lies entirely within the 15th Assembly District. So I understand the importance of it. I understand that, you know, there's no, when you look at the Delta being the largest estuary in northern or North or South America, it's critically important to all of us. So I just want to share with you some words that I shared with my fellow Assembly members on the Assembly floor a few weeks ago, and I hope I'm not repeating what's already been said. But if you take a look at the Blue Ribbon Report, the Delta Vision Report that was produced, it calls for a conveyance to be built that will transport 15,000 cubic feet of water a second around the Delta. And to give you an idea of the magnitude of that, the original Peripheral Canal in 1982 was designed to transport 22,000 cubic feet of water per second. When we have drought years, there is not 15,000 cubic feet of flow a second for most of the year. In 2007, there were only 3 months where the water flow exceeded 15,000 cubic feet a second, and the highest month was 22,500 cubic feet. So that gives you an idea of the magnitude of the conveyance they're talking about building in this report. If you look at a 2006 engineering report that was prepared for the Delta, to have a conveyance to transport 15,000 cubic feet of water per second, you would need to have a canal that was between 500 and 700 feet wide. You would need a 1,300-foot right-of-way for this canal. If the average freeway lane is 12 to 13 feet, that's the size of a 100-lane freeway, okay? And the conveyance itself would be between 47 and 48 miles long. Now, by comparison, the Panama Canal varies in width from 500 to 1,000 feet and is 50 miles long. So my closing statement is I will never vote to build a Panama Canal down the middle of the 15th Assembly District. I know we have important decisions to make about how we share our water, but maintaining the Delta, restoring the Delta, and making sure that those of us in Northern California have adequate, clean, safe water supplies is critically important with me today, So I'm very happy to be with you here today. I look forward to continuing to working with all of you, and I will do all I can to make sure that the Delta is protected. Thank you.
talked about the people, we've talked about the agriculture, we now need to talk about the fishing industry. And to do that, I've asked Zeke Grader to come join me. He joined the Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Association as the executive director in 1976, creating the West Coast's largest commercial fishing trade organization. Through its member organizations represents men and women who are owners or operators of vessels or crew, commonly referred to as family fishermen. Zeke?
Thank you, Senator. And I want to bring you all greetings from the coast. You know, it's been said that there are people in California who have looked at the Delta as if it's a reservoir, but it's not. It's a living ecosystem. It's an estuary. And that estuary gives life to the economies of our coast from Santa Barbara to Astoria, Oregon. That's what this Delta means. And what we're seeing, however, is that its lifeblood of this living ecosystem is being drained out of it. And as that lifeblood, its freshwater inflow, which makes an estuary work, is being drained, we're losing jobs. We're seeing massive unemployment now along our coast. So I'm here today telling you that the coast is in solidarity with the Delta. We must protect it for all of California, for all of the West Coast. Thank you.
Thanks, Zeke. I'd like to invite Bill Jennings to come forward, who's the chairman of the California Sport Fishing Protection Alliance. He was the Delta keeper from '95 to 2005. And whenever anybody talks about the Delta, in the Delta or anywhere else, you hear Bill's name a lot. Go, Bill.
Thank you, Lois. Good morning. We're here today to talk about a package of water bills on the fast track. But what we're really talking about is a perversion of legislative due diligence and responsible oversight. We're talking about secrecy and backroom deals and the exclusion of recreational and commercial fishermen, Delta farmers, and the affected communities from the process. We're talking about physical irresponsibility, the authorizing of $20 to $40 billion in fees and bonds for projects whose details, specific details, have yet to be revealed. We're talking about a habitat conservation plan whose purpose is not the restoration of fish and wildlife, but evasion of law. We're talking about new dams and a Panama Canal around the Delta that will send fisheries into extinction, turn the estuary into a cesspool, wreak havoc on the Delta's economy, deliver less water that is presently exported, and lead to increased litigation because of legal flaws and bad science. Indeed, we're talking about a legislative dash to the worst environmental disaster in American history. And we're here to insist that our legislators learn the details, the specific details of proposed projects before squandering limited resources on stranded assets on Arnold's Folly. We're here to support regional self-sufficiency, schedule public hearings where all affected parties can testify and exercise oversight and enforce the law. The Delta is dying because existing laws are ignored. How can we believe promises and guarantees and assurances from those who have lied to us for 30 years? How can we believe this legislature will fix the Delta if it's unwilling to operate in the sunshine and unwilling to enforce its own laws? Enough's enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Now Robert Johnson, who is a Contra Costa fisherman. Robert, are you here? Come on down.
I'm Robert Johnson. I'm an avid fly fisherman and angler, an outdoor enthusiast, and a political activist. We're here today because we're seeking solutions that will provide water for all Californians' people, their farms, and their fish. Solutions that are far less costly, far more efficient, and far more timely. and will provide water for California's present and future needs. This Peripheral Canal bond measure will likely put the California taxpayer on the hook for up to $40 billion, including interest. And it will not provide one drop of additional water. This while we're firing teachers, we're furloughing state employees, we're in a full-scale budget crisis. How can state legislators allow the secretive, hugely expensive bond measure to be jammed through without rigorous debate exploring the alternatives? Alternatives that we know can provide the state up to 10 million acre-feet of water per year. More water than has ever been exported from the Delta. Yet these solutions are ignored. And yet the communities, the coastal communities, the San Francisco Bay communities, the Delta communities are ignored. Make no mistake, this crisis is the direct result of powerful lobbying of federal and state officials and improper staffing of critical agencies, where senior leaders at the Bureau of Reclamations, the Department of Water Resources, and others have come from position with water contractors. And this breeds conflict of interest. And because of this arrangement, state and federal project operators have allowed more water to be exported than was legally permissible. Land that should not have been cultivated because it lacked water rights was planted with permanent crops based on the expectation of continued, albeit illegal, increased level of exports. A handful of corporate agribusinesses that literally control the distribution of water in the San Joaquin Valley, they've allowed this to happen with full knowledge that in low water years, this region would have its allocation of water cut. Now, many in the San Joaquin Valley, many farmers and others have been taken advantage of. They've grown with the expectation that there was a guaranteed, essentially guaranteed water supply, when the distributors have full-on known that this would not be the case, that they had the most junior water rights in the state. Yet now they have orchestrated a highly effective PR campaign that seeks to make Californians believe that radical environmentalists and fishermen would put a 3-inch fish before California jobs, farms, and people. We are farmers. We are fishermen. We are concerned citizens. We are Indian tribes. We are business owners and voting enthusiasts. We are concerned citizens, and we are fighting to save our communities.
Yeah.
You know, as was said, the Delta is the largest estuary in the West Coast, or in the western United States, and the Western Hemisphere. It is our Everglades of the West, and that's the way we need to think of this. This is a vast resource. It is not one big pipe to be redirected to the interest of billionaires who control distribution of water in the San Joaquin Valley. This is about a hydraulic billionaires cabal that clearly has junior water rights, and it seeks to bypass age-old laws in order to profit from a larger and more reliable water racket. This is about water profiteering, or pumping water for cash from the Delta, as was the title of a recent investigative series by Contra Costa Times reporter Michael Tower. California is seeing what happens when we allow our critical public infrastructure to be controlled in a manner that allows conflict of interest and windfall profiteering. Remember our experiment with energy deregulation. Remember the Enron scandal that fleeced the California ratepayer of billions. This bond measure, this secretive maneuvering, is following that same path. Thank you very much. I'd like to remind everybody, it's about salmon. Salmon is food. It's about people, farms, and fish. And the Endangered Species Act, it protects us all. It even protects us from ourselves. Thank you.
There it is.
I'd now like to introduce Debbie Davis with the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water. Debbie.
Good afternoon. I want to let you know that you're joined here today, all of you folks from the Delta, from members of our coalition from around the state, from as far away as San Diego. I think unfortunately they're in the building now at a meeting, but they were out here to support you. From folks from a small town called Alpa in Tulare County, and from folks, yay Alpa, and from folks as far away as Redding. And we're all here because you all are being asked to make sacrifices in the name of state interests. And we want you to know that we know they're not in our interests. And so they're not in the interests of the tribes that we work with from far northern California, whose ancestral lands have been flooded to provide water for California. They're not in the interests of those other tribes up there that rely on salmon that's no longer coming back to feed them. It's not in the interests of community members we work with in Los Angeles or San Diego who pay higher water rates for water they import when there are more cost-effective means to supply their water. And it's not in the interest of the communities in the Central Valley that don't have safe drinking water while very high-quality water flows through their backyards. And I'd like to introduce to you very quickly a young man from Alpa, California, Freddie Morales, who'd like to just say a couple words.
Hello, good morning. My name is Freddie Morales. I live in Alpa. I'm just here to say that we need good water. You know, in my community, the water is bad and people get sick. We need good water, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce someone who's very well known to you, Barbara Barragan-Perea, who has been the energy and effort, along with all of you, for Restore the Delta. Barbara.
Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Barragan-Perea, and I'm the campaign director for Restore the Delta. Our grassroots organization started 2.5 years ago with 70 people. We are close to having 3,000 supporters, and we thank you for coming out today to make our voices heard here at the Capitol. While the state is cutting funding for schools, for public safety, for programs for people in need, the legislature is looking at creating a new water bond package that will cost Californians billions in taxes and new fees that will be paid back for generations. But even worse, this bond project will continue to perpetuate an irrational water management system that is based on moving water from Northern California to Southern California through or around the Delta at our expense. Today we are calling on the legislature to create a water bond package that will break dependence on Delta exports once and for all, and to make a new water system so that all Californians can have access to clean drinking water through reclamation, groundwater cleanup, recycling, and restoration projects. We want a new water package for California. We want one that's going to be cost-effective and that will net new water for all. We are also calling on the legislature to remember the people of the Delta, the 500,000 people of the Delta. Our Delta economy and agriculture, when you put in the multiplier effect, the tractors that get sold, the seed that gets sold, is worth $3.5 billion a year. We have a recreational fishing economy that supports 6,000 jobs and is worth close to $1 billion a year. We have commercial fishing in California, a salmon season that's been closed for 2 years, netting in the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars to our economy. And that doesn't include the yachting and recreational boating industries within the Delta. We need to protect those economies. At a time when we are losing revenue in the state, we want to create an environmental policy that will lead to the loss of further revenue. It doesn't add up. What we need is a water management system that isn't predicated on 19th century solutions. What we need is a water system that offers 21st century possibilities. Thank you.
And last but never least, we want to hear from the environmental community. First, Charlotte Hadi, I believe, from the Planning and Conservation League. Charlotte, I only know you as Charlotte.
Good afternoon, I'm Charlotte Hadi from the Planning and Conservation League. I'm touted as an environmentalist, but first I'm a Californian. The package that they are completing in this building is nowhere near complete. The thing that they've talked about the least is how they're going to pay for it. And what Californians deserve to know is how many classrooms it's going to cost to pay for this expensive project? How many in-home services it's going to cost to push this through? And we are here today to say that in this transparent process that we're pushing for, they need to answer those questions up front to make sure that they pay for the environmental protection that will allow you all to fish and recreate and boat in the Delta as you all have done for generations. Thank you.
And from the Sierra Club, Jim Metropolis. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Woke. My name is Jim Metropolis with the Sierra Club, and I'm sad to say I'm disappointed to be here today. I'm disappointed that we have to come here and ask for the barest bit of information about this legislation that they're proposing to so-called fix water management problems in California. If these solutions are so great, why can't they show it to us here? Yeah. I'm sad that we have to be here and beg for them to take input from the local residents of the Delta. Yeah. Why do we have to beg them to hear our input to fix the problems in the Delta and statewide water management? However, I am encouraged that all these people showed up here today. I'm encouraged to stand with these elected officials that are standing up for the residents of the Delta, standing up to talk about 21st century solutions to our 19th century problems, because we don't need more dams, we don't need more ditches. There are other things that we can work on and agree to fix the problems here in the Delta today. And let's go out there and let's get our message out there that we're not going to go away. And we're going to come back day after day to make sure that the legislature takes care of all the problems with water management and the system in California today. Thanks.
And batting cleanup is Steve Evans from Friends of the River. He's been active in our area and throughout the state for the last, and probably the nation, for the last 30 years or longer probably.
So I'm going to try a little something that you don't always run into in the building behind us, and that is logic. The people behind me accept it. You can't restore a Delta ecosystem and Delta economy that's been devastated by the 1,400 dams we built in California and the hundreds of miles of canals by yet building one more very large canal and more dams. It's just a matter of logic. It's not going to happen. This is basically a transfer of water resources from the Delta, from the north, to support San Joaquin and Tulare Basin agribusiness and Southern California developers. The Peripheral Canal was a bad idea in 1982. It's an even worse idea today. We need to let the legislature know that we can meet our current and future water needs through water conservation, water recycling and reclamation, improved groundwater management. Those are much more effective, will produce more water than the canal and dams, and cost a lot less. My partner is a 17-year teaching veteran in California's elementary schools. She was pink slipped. In a time where the budget is spiraling out of control, the economy is in a shambles, we're making severe cuts to public safety, public health programs, and public environmental programs. It makes no sense to move forward with a multi-billion-dollar boondoggle idea like a peripheral canal and new dams. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to thank everyone who has spoken today, but most of all, I want to thank you for coming out here, for standing up, and for asking that the Delta have a voice. I would ask you, don't keep the sign. Go into the building, take the signs, take them to legislators, and give them the sign, and tell them that you're there because you want the Delta to have a voice. I did, yes. And we will be meeting, since we went so far over, we'll be meeting with the press over here. Anyone who can stay, please come over and we'll talk to them. Yes.
We want to say thank you to Senator Lois Wolk for her leadership and her participation today. We have 5 lobbying teams led by team captains set up this afternoon so that we can make visits inside the building. Please come on over to the table if you would like to go along with the lobbying team.